Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. Sitting in for Alina, my name is David Talbot. I'm Managing Director and Head of Research here at Red Cloud Securities, and I'm delighted to host a Red Cloud webinar on lithium today. We are going to hear from Argentina Lithium and Energy VPX Miles Rideout. Now, during today's webinar, he will provide an overview and outlook, and then we will take some questions. We'll get to your questions as we can, and you can type them into the chat box at any time. Now, before we kick things off, first we need to discuss the fine print. During this webinar, forward-looking statements may be made. I direct listeners to the forward-looking statements outlined on page 2 of Argentina Lithium's corporate presentation. That can be found on the company's website, argentinalithium.com. For Red Cloud Securities, Inc., I'd highlight this webinar is for information purposes only. It should not be considered a solicitation or recommendation to buy or sell securities. We note this call does not consider the particular situation or needs of individual investors. Participants should rely on their own investigation and seek their own professional advice before investing. So please see our most recent research located on the Red Cloud website for specific disclosures on Argentina Lithium. Now with that, I turn it over to Miles to update the audience on that company.
Thank you very much, David. Well, it's a pleasure to see everybody here today. We love talking to investors and potential investors. So Argentina Lithium Energy is an exploration stage company. We're based in Vancouver, and I'll be talking about the company background and our projects in Northwest Argentina. As David mentioned, I'll be making forward-looking statements as I go through this presentation. So we're looking at a map right now of the lithium triangle. And so people who've looked at lithium investments are probably aware of this area. It consists of Northwest Argentina, the north part of Chile, and a portion of Bolivia. All of our 4 project areas are located in Northwest Argentina, which we think is the best of the 3 lithium investment destinations shown in the map. The reason why is lithium projects in Argentina are regulated the same way as for any other mining commodity. So that means we go through a similar permitting process as for any other mine. And then once we go into operation, we'd be paying, it's usually a 3% net smelter royalty to the local province, the same as for any other mine, and then we go through mine closure, the same as for any other mine. That's in contrast to Chile. So even though Chile has very good lithium projects, about 12 years ago, the conservative government in Chile regulated that lithium would be considered a strategic commodity for Chile. And so ever since that time, lithium projects have been regimented in a different way. And the way it operates today in Chile, a project going ahead in Chile essentially has to partner with the government of Chile to get their project into production. And Bolivia is, even though they have a massive lithium or potentially massive lithium resource, all the mineral assets of Bolivia are held by the government. And so it's very difficult for a project to go ahead in Chile, in Bolivia. And even though there have been announcements over the last 10 years about projects potentially moving ahead, many of those have come undone because of mid-level politicians or something like that. So what we see is that Northwest Argentina, the provinces of Jujuy, Salta, and Catamarca are the best places to invest if we're looking at lithium brines. And that's the other point I'll make. If we're looking at the lithium triangle and Northwest Argentina, we're looking at lithium deposits held in brine deposits. So that means we're exploring salt lakes. Usually these are dry salt lakes. And a lithium project would involve drilling the salt flat and extracting lithium brines from depth. These will likely be saturated lithium brines. They're not, even though they're aqueous, it's not the same as water. And then you would process those brines and extract the lithium from operations on surface, and then most likely produce a lithium carbonate product for sale. And that is in contrast to the major lithium projects, for example, in Australia, which are hard rock mines. What that means is that lithium projects in Argentina are environmentally friendly, and they're low cost to develop, and they're low cost to operate. So there's a lot to like about exploring in this region. An important point of news for our company, going back about 15 months, we were approached by Stellantis Corporation. Stellantis is one of the major automotive manufacturers. They hold Fiat, Peugeot, Chrysler. It's that group. And they were looking to invest in lithium companies with the objective of obtaining offtake agreements. So they approached us at the beginning of 2023, and they did about 8 months of due diligence and review of projects with us and negotiated an investment plan whereby they acquired 19.9% of our local subsidiary. And they funded us, the money that we received in hand, they funded us in the format of Argentine pesos. After we converted those pesos to hard currency or hard currency equivalents, we realized about $40.5 million US dollars of funding from that operation. They hold 19.9% of our local subsidiary, and they have an offtake agreement. Once we can get any of our projects into production, they would have the first right of refusal on 15,000 tons per year of lithium carbonate production from us over 7 years. And the purchase rate that they would acquire that lithium production from us is discounted to market price. The terms of the discount depend on the market price, and it would vary from no discount at all if the market price is low to a substantial discount. It's a very important deal for Stellantis once we can get our projects into production. Anyway, we took about half of the proceeds of that investment, and we prepaid drilling meters here in Argentina. And so we are funded for drilling as we take our project through resource identification stage and potentially into drilling out production well fields. And the other half of the proceeds from the investment, we exercised property options, and we covered a number of corporate requirements, other corporate requirements like that. Anyway, so we have money in the bank for drilling, and currently, I guess we have about $3 million of cash available to take us through this year. You'll see with our company that we're associated with the Grosso Group. The Grosso Group is a Vancouver-based mining resource management group, which have been focused in Argentina since the early 1990s, so about 3 decades. And the Grosso Group does not directly hold stock in our company, but they manage us and 2 other resource companies focused in Argentina. And so what that means is that we're able to share corporate resources like legal, administration, IT, those kinds of corporate resources. We share them with 2 other companies. And it means that we have excellent resources available for us, for our use here in Argentina, and we only pay about 1/3 of that cost. Now, I'll just point out, these are 4 of the projects that have been developed by Grosso Group companies, or explored and discovered by Grosso Group companies over the last 3 decades. So these are 4 world-class discoveries made by the Grosso Group. Gualcamayo and Chinchillas are both operating projects that were discovered by the Grosso Group companies. And Navidad was a world-class silver project discovered by the Grosso Group about 20 years ago. It's no longer in the portfolio. And the Amarillo Grande property is is part of Blue Sky Uranium, and it's a massive new uranium district. And I think there was some recent news they've been funded to take their project ahead. That news came out about 6 weeks ago, I think. None of those projects correlate with our company, Argentina Lithium Energy, but we're hoping to emulate this success with our own 4 projects, which we'll discuss now. This is the board of directors and our management team. So that's Joe Grosso on the top left. And by his side is Nicholas Kakos, our CEO. Actually, Nicholas, by training, is a chemist. He has a chemistry degree. And that's actually very useful when we're looking at some of the processing technologies that we're evaluating to take into production on our projects. That Nicholas is conversant with these types of processes and technologies. It makes high-level communication very convenient. My own background, I'm an exploration geophysicist. I grew up in Canada, and I worked 2 years in mineral exploration in Canada, and considered sunnier and drier places to work. I left Canada to work in northern Chile in 1989, and I stayed on copper and gold projects in Chile for 8 years. And I moved to Argentina in 97. I've worked on hundreds of projects here in Argentina, but my focus has really been on lithium since about 2015. And I started consulting on lithium projects about 2005. I've been with the Grosso Group as a consultant since the late 1990s, and they took me on as exploration manager about 3 years ago. It's been a very good team. We've been remarkably successful in acquiring projects and getting public recognition from companies like Stellantis, and I very much enjoy working with the Grosso Group. I'll leave the lithium industry perspective to one side. I don't think it's the most interesting thing here for our investors. I'll just make the point, though, I'm not too concerned about the ebbing and flowing of the lithium industry in these still fairly early days. The lithium industry has had a number of pullback periods over the last, say, 15 years. But if you look at where the industry is today compared to where it was 10 years ago, the value of lithium is several times higher, perhaps 3 times higher than where it was 10 years ago. And the world's production of lithium is about 4 times greater. That means the lithium industry today is at least 12 times larger in size than where it was 10 years ago. And it continues to grow. And if you look at the legislation passed in North America and Europe, where private vehicle sales and fleet vehicle sales are likely to transition to hybrid and EV type vehicles in the 2030s, I anticipate that the lithium industry will continue to grow strongly. And that is one of the reasons why Stellantis was so interested in doing an offtake deal with us. Stellantis and other automotive manufacturers perceive that at the end of this decade, acquiring lithium commodity will be a hard-fought process. And so I think investors can look forward to other automotive manufacturers doing offtake agreements similar to what Stellantis did with us at all levels, because I think all the automotive manufacturers are really focused on securing their supply lines. Okay, looking at the project areas, I'm showing our northern 2 project areas first. So we are looking at Salta province in this. I'll talk to the blown up image on the right-hand side. We have Rincon West in the north, and our property areas there are outlined in that deep red color. And then the Pocitos project is down below that. The blue shaded areas are the salt flats where our projects are located. And I'll just point out, you can see a lot of infrastructure in this map. The red road going across the top of our Rincon West project, that's the international highway to Chile. Chile is that white area in the far top left corner of the map. And if we're crossing the border into Chile, right beside our project, that means we're only about 300 kilometers from the Pacific coast and the deep sea ports at Antofagasta, Chile. So there is a potential transport corridor for us to move our production out to the Pacific coast. And you'll also see that there's a railway, that black hatch-marked line that goes across our Pocitos project. This is a historic railway which is being recovered for the lithium industry. Currently, about one train is transporting lithium production out of Salar de Morto on that railway these days. And I'll just make a point that at Pocitos, there's also an industrial park. And so this is an area which is being developed for really focusing on lithium production and other mining commodities with advanced transport infrastructure. It's a very easy, friendly area to work. Our next two projects, we're going to go to the south. Hang on. So now we're transiting from Salta to Catamarca province. I'll just make the point. Both those provinces are pro-mining provinces. And the Antofalla project is one of our largest projects. I'm not going to focus too much on that area here, but while we're looking at this image, I'll just make the point that our neighbor to the south of us on Antofalla is Albemarle Corporation. That's the world's second largest lithium producer. And our fourth project is Incahuasi down in the southern or lower part of this map. These are all exploration projects for us currently. While we're looking at this image, though, I'll just point out that looking at Antofalla, if you look across to the east, that blue shaded area where it says Sal de Oro, Sal de Vida, and Phoenix, that is Salar de Morto. That is the core of Argentina's lithium production today. It's an immensely rich lithium brine salar, and it's only about 25 kilometers to the east of our Antofalla project. So let's take a more detailed look now at Rincon West, where we focused our exploration over the last 3 years. So in this blown up image, the Argentina lithium properties are shaded green in this image. So we've got a property block where we focused our drilling on the west side. That's the west block. Paso de Seco is an area we began drilling just last month. And then there's a block on the east side called Don Furman, which is in permitting. We do not have a drill permit for that area yet. We're anticipating that we could have the permission to drill in the second half of this year. The central part of the basin is held by Rio Tinto Mining, and you might have seen that in one of my previous images where it said Rio Tinto. So Rio Tinto has made a lot of news here recently. They've announced that they're going to invest $2 billion into their Rincon project, which is the central part of this basin, and they're going to develop over the next 30 years a 50,000 ton per year lithium production facility in the central part of the basin. It'll take them a number of years to construct that. We ourselves are exploration stage, and I'll show you some of the exploration activity that we've completed. But before I move off this image, I'll just point out one other area of interest, and I'll just circle it here. Down here in the southeast part of the project, that irregular outline shown in red is Argosy Minerals. Argosy is basically a peer company of ours that announced a resource on Rincon about 6 years ago, and they took their market capitalization. They're an Australian company, but I'll convert these numbers to US dollars. So back around 2019, they had roughly a $5 million market cap. They made their resource announcement and a production plan, and they took their market capitalization up to as much as $600 million US dollars over the succeeding years. And they've continued to build on their resource holdings at the project. Their market value has dropped back a lot with the current pullback in the lithium project, but they generated a great deal of value for their investors. And I'll make the point that their project on Rincon contains about 2,800 hectares. Our project is greater than 5,000 hectares on Rincon. We're hoping to emulate their example as we take our project through resource stage, where we're currently defining resources, and then produce a production plan. Let's move on a little bit. So I've blown up the West Block area. This has really been the focus of our drilling because it's where we had our first drill permit. Because, of course, I'm an exploration geophysicist by training, we lead off all of our exploration work with geophysics. So what we're using here is a geophysical technique called transient electromagnetic soundings, in which we're able to define where the electrically conductive lithium brines are located. Now, any brine would be electrically conductive if it's hosted in a porous sediment unit. And so we need to drill out a project to define actually what kind of lithium grades we have. What I've done is the map on the right-hand side shows the traverses where we completed the geophysics. Those are those blue lines, which are either north, south, east, west, and one oblique. And I've blown up one of the cross-section views of the project so that we can see what kind of imaging we begin with once we start drilling. So the blown up image on the left-hand side, it's a cross-section view. We're looking north. So we're going from the salt flat on the right-hand edge of that image up into a flat, higher plane on the left-hand side. The surface trace of the ground is that black trace along the top of the image. So you can see the area is very flat. It's basically, we're going from the salt flat itself, and we're on a very sandy plain, which slopes very gently upwards towards some hills, which are off in the far west side. As we drill through the subsurface, we typically drill through about between 50 and 100 meters of dry gravel. It's the initial 50 meters typically dry. We then get into about 50 meters of fresh water saturated gravel. And then at about 100 meters depth, we get into the concentrated lithium brines. So what you'll see, those white units that we see in that image are electrically resistive. So either dry or fresh water, both are relatively electrically resistive. And then the conductive units are where the deep purple colors begin, and that shows where we're getting into the brines. So from about 100 meters depth to about 300 meters depth, we're drilling through saturated lithium brines. And then at about 300 to 350 meters depth, we transition into a much older geologic basement. And at that point, the potential for the project rapidly disappears. What this means, though, is that we have about a 200-meter column of brines on our West Block properties. It's quite different from what a lot of other lithium projects contain. If you're working in the central part of a salar, typically you'll be working in a salt area, and the upper part of the salt crust could be fractured and porous. And then as you move to depth, you move into an area where the salt becomes much more compact and much harder to find resources. And so you'll see in many other lithium projects held by other companies, they're talking about a resource in the first 50 meters, the first 100 meters. And you can see, because we're in this kind of earthy area where we have sands and gravels, we're talking about a column of lithium brines extending from 100 to 300 meters depth. And I'll make the point, when we acquired this ground, because you can see we're right on the edge of the salt flat, we postulated that the same brines that occur on the salt flat would permeate this sandy basin area located adjacent to the salt flat and connected with the salt flat. So the geophysics initially confirmed that, that hypothesis. And then we did 14 drill holes, and I'll just show those results now. So if you analyze these numbers, they're basically relating what what I was explaining in terms of us going through dry sediment, then fresh water saturated sediment, and then from about 100 to 300 meters, we're going through saturated lithium brines. Typically, our brines in this west block are ranging from about 250 up to 400 milligram per liter lithium. I would call this a mid-grade brine deposit. And just while we're looking at that map on the right-hand side, that yellow shaded area, that demonstrates where we've interpreted the extent of the brine aquifer from the geophysics. So we did all that geophysics that I showed previously, and then from that work, I've shaded everything which is brine aquifer within our projects yellow. So you can see that there's actually quite a substantial area here which contains brines. Our most recent drilling is in the, let me point it out here. We're in this inverted L-shaped area. Hang on, just trying to sketch. Let me clear this off. I'll do this again. This inverted area, inverted L-shaped area on the east side of our property, that's our Rincon Ceta 2 property. We have 5 drill holes there. We have a rotary well drilled there. And we're just completing our second pump test this month. The drilling there was remarkably successful. It's going to be a core area for production as we take our project ahead. Let me clear that off. So this is the West Block area, and we're examining how we're going to develop this area, and we're using our brines for direct lithium extraction testing and for all the technical evaluation we need to hang on. There we go. Okay. Let me just go back. So that, I'll just point out, so the work that we're doing here, we've moved on to technical evaluation, engineering analysis, and working out the technologies that we'd use to produce lithium from this area. Now looking at the northern block, Paso de Sico, we've got 2 exploration wells drilled. We completed those in December. We're evaluating those results, and we'll consider more drilling based on those results once we have a full analysis completed. And then Don Fermin on the east side, we've completed geophysics on Don Fermin, and that's what I'm showing here. So this is the same kind of geophysics that I showed previously. And you can see there's multiple cross sections here lined up on this plan view. And so you can see that the entire west side of the project contains these deep purple colored areas, which we postulate contain concentrated lithium brines. And if you recall, when I mentioned Argosy Minerals and their property to the southeast, the Argosy property, I'll just roughly sketch where it is for reference. It's about 1 kilometer south and west of us here. So Argosy's property is in this area I'm outlining now. They have a very large resource to find there. So once, say the second half of this year, once we can start drilling on our Don Fermin property, I imagine that we can generate similar kinds of results to what Argosy was able to obtain on their property because it's right beside us. So that's the area where we focused our exploration, but we've also completed geophysics on Antofalla North and on Pocitos, and we have some historic geophysics on the Incahuasi property. I've moved the image now to the Antofalla North property. So now we're transitioning from Salta down to Catamarca province, located to the south. This is about 100 and maybe 150 kilometers south of Rincon. At Rincon, we have a property holding about 5,000 hectares with mid-grade brines, and we're located beside Rio Tinto mining. At Antofalla North, we have more than 13,000 hectares held. We're located adjacent to Albemarle Corporation. Albemarle has a very large mid-grade resource on their property. When they purchased that property about 9 years ago, information circulating at the time indicated that the area purchased by Albemarle likely had an 11 million ton resource of lithium carbonate equivalent. That would make it the largest resource in Argentina. We were successful in claiming and acquiring a large block of ground immediately north of Albemarle Corporation. If you look at this image from north-south, our properties, which are the green shaded areas, they extend about to 27 kilometers north-south and roughly 7 kilometers east-west. These areas are undrilled, but we have extensive geophysics completed here that demonstrate that we have brines. They have not been tested by drilling, so I can't say lithium brines yet, but our neighbor to the south has a substantial lithium brine resource. If we're able to demonstrate similar results to what Albemarle found on their property, this will be a major discovery for our company. We're in permitting for drilling, and probably our focus currently is completing drilling and evaluation at Rincon. But once we have exploration assets available, we'd like to bring them down to Antofalla North and begin drilling here as well. I think there's immense potential in this area. The Pocitos project is located basically in between Antofalla and Rincon West. At Pocitos, this is an area which has been studied a little bit for lithium. All historic drilling on Pocitos produces lithium values, but typically lower grade brines in the range of, say, 100 to 150 milligram per liter lithium. Our property holding here is 26,000 hectares. It's not our focus because I don't think that the lithium industry right now is particularly amenable to lower grade deposits. But I expect that will change as production technologies improve and as the lithium commodity price solidifies. I think that a large tonnage lower grade deposit would be extremely valuable. And I think that we have that potential. At this project, we've completed more than 100 line kilometers of geophysics here. It looks tremendous, the results that we have. We don't have any drilling here. We don't have any drilling scheduled yet. But as we get our two primary projects, Rincon and Antofalla, on their way to resource evaluation and production planning, then we'd be looking at Pocitos and how to drill out the resource potential here. And then similar to Pocitos, we're on our far southernmost project area. This is Incahuasi. And again, well, we have a 25,000 hectare property in Incahuasi. We have the entire Incahuasi Basin. In case you've seen other companies with properties in Incahuasi, I'll just make the point. There's two different salars or salt lakes called Incahuasi. There's an Incahuasi salt lake in Salta, and there's a completely separate Incahuasi salt lake in Catamarca province, and that's the one we have. We have the entire Incahuasi salar in Catamarca. We have 4 historic wells drilled here. They produce an average grade of 109 milligram per liter lithium, so a lower grade result. But again, once the lithium market has matured to the point where a large tonnage, lower grade deposit could be viable, we think that this could be an eminently practical project to take into production. Just while we're looking at this image, I'm just going to draft one item out here. You'll see that there's a black volcanic flow here on the southeast area, or it's a volcano, in fact. And between us and that volcano is Lake Resources' Kachi project. So Lake Resources drilled out and presented a feasibility study for their project. It's located actually in this flat area here. It's the closest project to our Incahuasi area. It is not, the basin they're in is separate from our basin. There's actually a ridge of hills that separate us from Lake Resources, but it's a very easy, low elevation area to operate. We've got a neighbor with an advanced plan for production. They don't have funding, I don't believe, right now for taking that into production. But hopefully we'll see some news from Lake Resources in the coming years. And as I say, in a few years' time, once we have our 2 primary projects with their exploration completed and on their way to production, we'd be evaluating our Inkawasi project and how to take this area into production also. Let me just move along. So this is our work program for 2025. So we're just completing the pump test on the Via Novena 2 area. That's the West Block area. And we've got 2 of the initial 6 drill holes completed at Pacifico. We're evaluating those. And we're hoping to have a drill permit for Don Furman in the second half of this year. And then the other areas that we're looking at, our exploration is simply focused on geophysics. Much of the geophysics has been completed. We still have a geophysics program ahead of us on that Inkawasi project, which I showed you in the slide I just moved from. We have about 134 million shares outstanding, fully diluted. We're about 197 million shares. Our recent market cap is about $16 million. And I think that we have excellent prospects to develop. We've got prospects for near-term, prospects which are better suited for the industry maybe in 5 years' time. Very large areas. I think we've moved very effectively to acquire ground and explore ground, and our initial exploration hypotheses have proven out very well with our drilling. I think it's an exciting company for investors to follow. We like answering questions from potential investors, and you can reach Sean Perger at our website or at this telephone number shown in the last page of our presentation. Thank you very much, David. That's our presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, Miles. Very informative. I did enjoy listening to your presentation there. So we are now going to kick off the Q&A portion of the webinar. So please, a reminder to everybody online that you can type your questions into the chat box. Let's kick it off here. Argentina is a top 5 lithium producer globally. And I guess from a geological standpoint and from a jurisdiction to do business, what makes this part of the lithium triangle so attractive for investment?
Having lithium salars with proven values is essential. So you need to get onto the ground initially, but because the legislation allows us to explore and develop a project the same as for a mining resource, it means any viable project has a very easy path towards production. And then the lithium resources themselves, they can be classed as high-grade resources. So that would be something like Salar del Muerto or Neolithium's project at Tres Quebradas. And those projects have grades in the range of, say, 800 to 1,000 milligram per liter lithium. The mid-grade projects like Rincon and Antofalla would be in the range of, say, 300 to 400 milligram per liter lithium. And then there's also potential large basins with lower grade brines, but very large potential resources such as Pocitos and at Inkawasi. And that would be in the range, say, of 100 to 150 milligram per liter lithium. And I think what's going to happen is while the focus is or has been on the higher grade projects and it's transitioning to the mid-grade projects, I think that we're going to come to a time when the focus will be on those large tonnage, lower grade deposits.
Mm-hmm. You did say easy path to production. So how much local support are you receiving as a lithium explorer in the provinces of Salta, Catamarca?
Well, we have a very good relationship with the mining directorates of both areas. Both areas, now these are pro-mining provinces, and when I'm dealing with the local mining officials, they have essentially a mandate to attract investment and to promote and assist projects. And the reason is, aside from the investment into their local industry and employment opportunities, they take a 3% net smelter royalty once any project goes into production. So it's it's their future cash flow for the provinces. There's also an important social component. The way exploration and mining operates in Argentina, there's a norm that we would hire 70% local workforce. So basically, we'd start right beside the project and be hiring people, right from nearby the project to provincial level hiring and then Argentina level hiring. What that means is that there's a lot of people employed on exploration projects or on production projects, which are residents of the area. It becomes a key source of income, for the province then and for the local communities. And it means you've got a huge groundswell of popular support because everybody's betting on the success of your project and your company.
Okay. Now, before we get to the asset, Argentina Lithium here has partnered with Stellantis, and one of the world's leading car makers. It has taken a piece of Argentina Lithium. It signed offtakes, provided funding up front. Can you give us maybe some color on why did you do a deal of this type, and why with this firm?
Well, when they invested at a value far above our market value, because they also did due diligence on the project, I think the optics on the deal are very good. If Stellantis has visited the project and they brought their technical experts in on the project and reviewed our business plans, and they're investing in 19.9% of the company, they like what we're doing. They validated the projects up to the level of development at that time, and they came aboard based on that information. So I think that provides a very positive message to our investors. And that was our perception at the time. The offtake is favorable. We've got a buyer for once we can take our projects into production. We talk to the Stellantis people on a weekly basis. We have a very close relationship with them. They're very interested in us taking our projects ahead as quickly as possible, and providing key contacts and feedback on our contacts for taking the project ahead, and feedback on planning. So in essence, then we're working very closely with Stellantis, and we get some immediate feedback from them on our planning.
Mm-hmm. Now, what does it mean to your company to have that kind of non-dilutive funding at this stage? Because I'd almost say they give you a blank check to do what you need to do.
No, but they funded us to cover a lot of drilling, and our key expenditure at this point, we had two expenditures. One was completing option agreements, so we covered a lot of that with the Stellantis investment, and we secured $20 million drill contract from the Stellantis investment. And so that means we've been able to do a lot of drilling, and we're going to continue to do a lot of drilling with the Stellantis funding. And so that means, even though there was some dilution at the time, and as you say, it doesn't, their investment currently doesn't dilute because they're 19.9% of the local subsidiary. And until they exercise and hold, they have an option to convert to stock in the company. Until they exercise that option, we'll do financings, but they will not dilute their interest. They're at 20% interest in the company. But it was a really positive investment at the time that we needed funding for drilling, and it allowed us to take our property holdings and our initial project resource through a key stage of development.
Okay. Rincon West, I'd say, is likely your flagship project, and that area is quite active. Rio Tinto, Argosy, both close by, as you noted. Can you maybe give us an idea of what they have and, what you're striving for? Something, obviously Rio is dropping $2 billion, so they must have really good incentive to be there.
I think so. Now, Rio hasn't, I don't believe Rio has disclosed their resource, their current resource holdings. When they acquired the property, there was about 260,000 tons of resource identified by the prior property holder. That was Rincon, I think Rincon Mining Limited. And but when Rio Tinto acquired Rincon Mining, They brought in, I think, 7 different drill rigs. They did a lot of drilling up and down the Salar. And they now have announced that they have a plan to develop a 50,000 ton per year production facility over the next 10 or 15 years. So huge plans. I'll just make the point that Rio Tinto is very bullish on Argentina in general, because aside from the announcement for Rincon, they've also agreed to purchase the largest lithium producer at Morto, and that was an acquisition worth more than $6 billion. That was completed maybe 4 months ago, or the announcement was made 4 months ago. So, Rio Tinto is committing in total $8 billion of investment to lithium assets in Argentina. That's huge. And then as for Argosy, I haven't looked at their results recently, but I think their most recent resource announcement, I think they indicate that they have a resource like 900,000 tons. I'm not certain the total value, which is a very large resource for their smaller property. Excellent results from their standpoint, and we wish them every success. I think that Argosy has taken their small property holding and over 6 years produced really incredible results for the investors.
Okay. Now your TEM surveys, they from West Block at least, look very impressive. You had a nice explanation how you use them to target reservoirs. Now, what sort of geological units would you prefer in the reservoir, and do they show up better in the geophysics?
It's a complex picture, and it gets fairly technical. Generally speaking, though, we would prefer more porous areas. But I'll just make the distinction. There's a difference between porosity and permeability. So porosity means you'll have units which hold a lot of brine, but if they contain a lot of clay, you might not be able to recover those brines. So that means you would have porosity without permeability. We would prefer sandy or clayey areas for production. Fractured salt is an excellent host as well, but projects hosted in salt deposits tend to behave differently. And I'll just make the point, it's very typical of projects hosted in salt deposits that once they start to pumping, the grade drops off, the lithium brine grade drops off typically quite quickly, because any freshwater deposit in the area, the fresh water starts moving towards your production wells. And because that fresh water is not saturated with salt, it starts to dissolve channels in the salt. And it means that channels are preferentially developed, which would access any fresh water in the environment. And so that's a real negative if you're looking at a salt deposit. If you're looking at earthy materials like sand or gravel, they don't dissolve that way. So you don't have that tendency to preferentially channel fresh water from nearby lakes or freshwater aquifers towards your production wells.
Sounds like you don't want path of least resistance. You want everything to permeate to your wells.
Exactly.
Fresh water outside.
Yeah, but I'll make the point, we identify fresh water on all of the projects, and in fact, we will take projects simply for the fresh water potential. You require fresh water for processing of your lithium brines, and so it's by no means a negative that we have fresh water sitting on top of our West Block, and we have, to my mind, I think we have fresh water in portions of any of our project areas, and we have freshwater recharge in any of our project areas. This is a really important consideration for taking a project from exploration into production. You will require fresh water.
Okay. Now, you spoke to your exploration plans in 2025 at Rincon West, a couple areas undergoing pump testing, drilling elsewhere as well. At what point do you believe Rincon West will be ready for a resource estimate?
We're working on that right now, and I don't have an updated number. So my feeling, though, is that we would have a resource that is likely enough for a small production facility, but we really need to drill out the Don Fermin area and complete our work at Paso de Seco to determine what the total resource potential is for the project. Don Furman is going to be a very important area for us. And so, the final resource number is more than a year away, maybe a year and a half or something like that away. But we're working on that West Block resource right now, and we're developing sort of engineering models, how we could take that smaller resource towards production.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I imagine you don't necessarily want to put out a small resource now. You'd rather do it correctly and make sure you've got some nice grades to target perhaps first. And then a PEA and pre-feasibility study after that, I imagine?
Exactly.
Yep. Okay, good. And now you do have several other projects as well. How do you go about prioritizing your projects? What makes Rincon West the one that you decided to go after first? And what would you say your pecking order is?
I like the easy infrastructure at Rincon. So we have two towns quite close by to us. The elevation is not too high. It's 3,700 meters elevation, year-round road access. And so, for instance, our exploration crews have been staying in local town. We haven't required an exploration camp on site. We drive out from town to the project twice a day when we're drilling out the project. So we have the national power grid running across the project. We've got the international highway. We've got fresh water. There's a lot of very favorable infrastructure available to us. I would rather be investing in drilling and resource estimates and things like that, rather than trying to build a road into the project. The next area of focus would be the Antofalla North project. There's year-round road access there, but it's not as easily accessed as Rincon. As I say, Rincon is very easy. When we go into Antofalla, we've got to drive over a ridge of hills, but we've got the town of Antofalla located about 40 kilometers south of the project. We've got Sabre Morto only 25 kilometers to our east, but that area would require more infrastructure development to take into production than Rincon. And then I think both Incahuasi and Pocitos are excellent areas. They both have excellent infrastructure potential, but being lower grade, I don't think our investors would reward us to produce a large tonnage, low grade resource today. I think people would just yawn. But I think once those types of deposits become in favor, say in 5 years' time, I think both those areas would have a very high value.
Okay. Before we wrap up, maybe a couple more general questions here. Could you maybe give us some color on your exploration team? Management experience, particularly in Argentina, is quite considerable. Do you need to fill any gaps in here, or is that more as you develop this thing along?
We will need a lot more engineering as we move towards production. So our forte and all of our group, basically, we're exploration people. So what we do is project generation, project development, drilling, resource identification. But the Grosso group have negotiated production deals on Gualcamayo and on Chinchillas, so two precious metal projects here in Argentina. And they've negotiated for their uranium project as well. They've negotiated funding for that. So, the Grosso group is able to negotiate production deals on advanced projects. But because we're doing technical development right now, we're using hydrological consultants who are taken on as a consultant basis. We're using engineering consultants taken on on a consulting basis. But as we move forward, they will need to be an engineering component to our company, which currently is filled by consultants.
Okay. Now, you're down in Mendoza, but Argentina Lithium, being based in Vancouver, are there any advantages to that and being listed in Canada, considering?
Oh, absolutely. No, Canada, and I mean, Vancouver is one of the financing centers of the world. You look at, a huge amount of resource funding comes either from Toronto or Vancouver. They're massive. Even though we look at Vancouver and say, well, it's a relatively small Canadian city, but no, it's one of the hubs of mining finance in the planet. And so, no, we require an office in Vancouver, and the Grosso Group team represent us very effectively in the Canadian markets.
Great. Okay. Well, why don't we leave it there? So Miles Rideout from Argentina Lithium, it's been my pleasure talking to you today.
It's been great. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, everybody else, for tuning in. Reminder, the Red Cloud Securities will be back next week when Alina sits down with Vizsla Copper, sitting in for Taylor, who will be in Vancouver. So that's January 21st at 2 p.m. Eastern. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you very much.